My name is Missy Mansour. I'm a line producer. I work primarily in comedy television, so half hour single cam, and I work here in Los Angeles. Yes, I came out here to LA and I did like a semester in LA program. Through that, I met an internship coordinator who introduced me to some Texas alumni that one of them worked at Warner Brothers. So I met with her, and that meeting did not go great. She was like, didn't have a lot of encouraging things to say and was just like, it's really tough out here. And why did you come out here? And, I don't know of any jobs, but you can ask my assistant. She might know. So I left that meeting feeling super deflated. I don't know what I thought would happen. I didn't expect I'd like walk in and she'd offer me a job, but I think I expected like another fellow Texan to be like, yeah, like you can do it. I did it. But I did take her advice and I did march right out of that office, and I talked to her assistant and I talked to the production assistant in that office, and I was like, how did you get this job? And she said, oh, my mom knows somebody, blah blah blah. And I was like, well, how do you do it if you don't know somebody? And she was like, well, now you know me, so just keep in touch. And I did, and I kept following up with her, and I would email her every couple weeks and just ask how it's going, is if there's anything that she heard. When she was done with the job she was doing there, she put me up for it, and that's kind of how I broke in, and that was my launch pad for probably every job I've gotten in the industry. I guess one thing that I did get from UT was I did a class in like physical production or something. And we broke up into groups and we each had to produce a short film. And we were doling out roles. And I wasn't really interested in any of them. And I talked to the teacher. I was like, I don't like, none of these are really speaking to me, and none of the, great jobs are left. He was like, you should try producing. Like, your strengths are communication, organization. I was like, wait a minute. So I just like wrangle everybody and like make sure that they know where to go and when, and budget it and handle all the logistics and put the puzzle together. He's like, yeah, that's it. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. That's what I'm interested in. I knew when I came out to LA that that's what I wanted to do, because I just knew that those were things that were strong suits of mine. And so when I got into the industry as a PA, I would say that to people. Once you start telling people, then the people that know that want to teach you a new thing, and they'd be like, okay, come here, let me show you how to do this or this. So I was very fortunate in having great bosses that would include me in things and teach me, and I wanted to learn, so it worked out for everybody. Typically a shoot, a work and shoot week are usually Monday through Fridays. As the producer, there's always something that comes up at nights or on weekends that I might have to deal with, but generally we don't shoot on weekends unless there's an extenuating circumstance. We usually start around 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. in prep. A 12-hour day is a normal day to shoot in the production world. Some shows go much longer, and some shows, manage to keep it to 10 hours or something. Well, one of them was a producer named Barry Halley, who is still a mentor of mine and great friend to this day. And when I was working at Warner Brothers as a production assistant, I would see her come in for meetings, and I was like, who is that? Because I have never seen a female producer. I only ever see these old white men come up here and be the producers that are meeting with our executives. And who is that lady? I want to work for her. And so I applied to be her assistant. She had already found somebody. And then I wound up crossing paths with her as when I was a PA. And I just brought some of that experience of that I had learned at Warner Brothers of working really hard, and she noticed, and then I started working with her right after. Another role model of mine is a friend, Justin McEwen, who I had been introduced to him by a friend who I was saying, I want to become a line producer, but I don't know the path. I don't know how you do it from being in the production office. I don't know how you make that jump. And my friend was like, well, call Justin. He did it. And so I called this guy, Justin, completely out of the blue. We'd never met, and he took the time to speak to me, and he was just like, don't let anyone tell you that he's like, it's not easy. I can't tell you that there's a linear path, but don't let anyone tell you that it can't happen, because it happened to me. Like, I did it. Again, coincidentally, wound up working with him 2 or 3 years later, and he's the one that trained me and got me into producing. You can call him coincidence or you can call it fate. I think it's probably more fate, because both of those people, Barry and Justin, are still huge parts of my life. They had advice to give, and I was all ears. I would say probably the final season of Fresh Off the Boat, producing that one was a big deal to me and something I was really proud of. I had been on the show for 5 years already, so I knew, all the players, and a lot of it was kind of already set up for me, which was helpful. But Justin, who I had worked with, had left to go produce another show, and I sort of stayed behind to take over and oversee. And we did a lot of big things in that season that I still don't know how we pulled off. One of them was, the show was based in the 90s, and so there was an episode written featured one of the characters being on the set of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Well, that show was huge in the 90s, but 2019 when we shot it, it had been over for 20 years or something. I knew that there wouldn't be a great way to do it digitally with it wouldn't look good if we did it on green screen. And I knew that we did not have the money to build a set that looked appropriate for what that was either. We could have maybe gotten really creative about what we were seeing in the shots, but instead I was like, why don't we find out where that set is? Because I knew that they were revamping the show. And so I was like, maybe the original set exists somewhere. Somehow it did. I found it. I don't know how. I still don't know how. I talked to our partners at ABC who produced the show, and they gave me the number to the person that produced Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And I talked to her, and she was like, yeah, we have that set in storage in Las Vegas. And if you guys can get it, to LA, and our team will put it up for you, you can use it. And that was also crazy. Everyone was like, we're not shipping a set here from, Las Vegas. Like, that we're not some big Marvel movie. Like, we don't have the money to do that. But I was able to convince the studio somehow that, however much, $250,000 we were going to spend to bring the set in, put it up, use it, and shoot it, was still going to be cheaper than trying to build a set or, do it all in green screen. And we only took we didn't get the whole set because we couldn't afford it. So we had a wedge of the set that we had to then keep moving the cast and moving the cameras around in a circle, because it was a circular set, to make it look like we had the whole thing. That's something that I still look back and I'm like, I don't know how I found it. I don't know how I convinced anyone to let me do it, but that's kind of what this job is. It's seeing something that looks really hard and figuring out how you can do it. One of the biggest challenges that you face as a line producer, I control the budget of the show and the schedule and the logistics. And one of the biggest challenges is doing what's written with the amount of money that you have. Fresh Off the Boat was a show that benefited from, we left our sets up every season. They were standing on the stages between 15 and 20 episodes every season. So you can kind of spread things out a little bit. In the streaming world, when you're doing 8 or 10 episodes, you just have such a smaller, condensed amount of time to get things accomplished. Generally, not a huge budget to do it in. All of your prep costs get spread over 10 episodes instead of 20 episodes, and it just all becomes a little bit more expensive. There's no show that's easy. It doesn't matter how simple the work is or how easy the writing is. It's always a challenge, because there's always going to be something that is wanted or needed that you can't afford. So it's really just about stretching that and figuring out how you can do it. As the line producer, I work, closely with the writers and the directors to make sure that what's written on the page gets on the screen. As far as generating ideas, a lot of times my ideas are reacting to what's already been written, and it's just finding a way to preserve the intent of the scene and the tone of the scene, and then finding a creative way to do it within the resources that we have. So for instance, the show that I'm on now, we have our sets built on stage. You build the interiors, but we never went to the exterior of this office. We never saw outside. We want to try and open up the show a little bit more this season and be able to see them out in the world a little bit more. But we don't have the money to go and buy out a corporate office and move the whole company down the street or across town just for the purposes of seeing some movement outside of a building. But there's this beautiful building that happens to be at the lot that we're shooting that I can look at it and say, okay, that looks like it could fit in our world. So then I bring the designer and I bring the director and I say, if we could use this wedge of space, is this something that you could buy as the exterior of our building? And then we figure out how to make that work. So a lot of my ideas come from needing to make other ideas work that we can't. I don't write on the show. You know, there's certain things that I might pitch, but usually the purpose for that is to make sure that we can get everything that we want. Yes. I mean, personally, I think being an effective communicator is number one, because you can have a lot of really good ideas and you can have a lot of good intentions, but if you can't articulate them to the people that need to hear them at the time that they need to hear them, then you're not getting anywhere. And I think, part of being a good communicator too is knowing when to bring up a problem or when to offer something, as opposed to just dumping something out of your brain so that it's on somebody else's plate. That's not an effective way to produce, because you have to think about the people that I work with all have their own specific jobs. As I work closely with the writers, it's like I need to protect them and protect their ability to be creative and know when to communicate things with them in a way that they'll be responsive to, because it's not adding too much to their plate while they're also trying to think about how to make the story the best version of itself. You have to be able to prioritize and kind of see problems coming down the road. There's a lot of times that I'll suggest something or bring something up and I'm kind of like, I don't particularly think I'm that smart. How am I the only person that thought of this? But it's because that's the job. The job is to be thinking about the role and thinking about the show in that way that you can foresee things that maybe other people didn't, because they have another role that they're fulfilling and they might be focused on something else. I think one of my favorite parts is just working out the puzzle. I think that my brain is never satisfied unless I feel like I've been extremely productive and worked out a problem. And so that's my favorite thing about producing, because it's a never-ending puzzle. You could work on the same show with the same people and the same sets for 5 years, and it's always going to be different. And that was the experience on Fresh Off the Boat, and that's been the experience ever since. No 2 days are exactly the same. It never feels like you're clocking in and, going to be sitting at your desk doing the same exact thing that you did the day before. I think just understanding how important it is for people to have an outlet to release their minds and to relax and to watch, something funny and something relatable. I think, a lot of the programs that I've worked on, Fresh Off the Boat, Diary of a Future President, a lot of them have characters that are so relatable. And a lot of the times when it's, when we're giving representation to minority groups, that's even bigger, because I still, to this day, we were finished with Fresh Off the Boat in 2019, and to this day, I still talk to people that are like, I never grew up with a show where the lead characters looked like me. Mm-hmm. And so to see that through other people, real life people's stories about how important it is to them, is that's why we do it, to have fun, to make people laugh. But the more we get into serving a purpose and telling the stories of people that aren't told enough, the better it gets. I think, one of my proudest achievements is
Mhm.
just the fact that I'm doing it in general. I think that there was every reason why I could not do this job and why I would not have gotten hired to do this job. And I didn't care because I was like, that doesn't service my goal in doing it. If all I'm thinking about is how there's so much stacked against me, then I'm never going to get anywhere. So I'm proud of that fact because I feel very fortunate. My legacy, I think I just want to see other people get the opportunity to follow a passion like this and do something that they love and make a difference in the industry. I think there was a lot of old school TV and filmmaking was over the top in what was allowed to happen on certain sets. And I think that that has now gone out the window. And I think that I have been fortunate to be working with people that create an inclusive and kind and fun environment. And I hope that that's a legacy that I leave, that people that come to work on my shows feel like they're included and that they're important and not just like it's a paycheck.